Hello, annyeonghaseyo. Welcome to the K-League United podcast pre-season series. I'm Matthew Binns. Joining me on today's episode is our podcast pre-season head coach, monitoring our performance, replacing the chips with pasta, and imparting that news desk knowledge to help us execute Kimbo Kyung levels of delivery. Lurking behind a clipboard with a stopwatch, it's Paul Neat. Hi, Paul.
Yes, that's me. And people say that pre-season is tough, but actually, this is the first time that we've done anything together, a podcast, or that kind of stuff, since the last day of last season, the comms.
Mm-hmm.
You said you've watched it back on K-League TV whilst you were heading towards the UK. How was it? I've only seen the odd clip.
Yeah, I'm a glutton for punishment, and I thought I should really watch this at some point. And I got stuck in Amsterdam airport on a layover with no money, and so I just sat there watching our commentary on K League TV because I could access it because I was outside of Korea. So
Yeah.
it wasn't as bad as I remembered, but there were times where I think, all right, I could have done better. But your goals, well, the goals, but your commentary for the goals, Paul, they've made quite a stir on on Korean web forums.
Well, I'm quite happy with the Song Min-gyu goal, but my voice goes for the Hankyo 1-1. So it's a bit of a wince if I hear that. I haven't looked at it since the week after the game, but yeah, it was all right. I mean, I'm just happy that there were actually goals to talk about. There weren't own goals and stuff like that. But yeah, I probably should try and watch the full game back because monitoring. It's to watch yourself and sort of see where you can improve. If you're a footballer, you'd be doing that, wouldn't you? You'd be doing video work back in on the before you go out onto the training pitch. Manager will have you in. See, you should have been there. You should have been stood there at this set piece, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
there we go.
Well, there we go. We do it as well. We sometimes watch ourselves back and think that could have done better.
I wonder if football players wince when they watch themselves back.
Oh god, probably. But yeah, we are speaking of training. Today's pre-season episode. It's the fourth in our warm-ups to the K League United season 5 proper. And this week we're going to try a quick shake-up in formation, and that's why I'm here. And we're going to talk about the turbulent terrain of K League transfers, Paul. And yeah, just in preparation for this episode, I just want to let you know. Well, you know anyway, but to let the listeners know, I've gone full method, Paul. I'm currently enduring what many foreign players and certainly foreign signings to the K League are going through at the moment. Yes, I've said goodbye to the loved ones, taken a long haul flight, and now I'm in my room, unable to leave for my mandatory 10-day quarantine. Paul, it's day 8 right now, Friday, January the 13th, 12:14 p.m. in case my quarantine officer is listening. Hi, Mrs. Lee. Let me ask you, how familiar are you, Paul, with the Korea's quarantine procedure?
Not in the slightest. I've never done it. But I feel like if I haven't done quarantine, then I won't really have like that story to tell. What's that word? Posterity. Anyway, when like something's a bit difficult and you look back and you think, oh yeah, but it was difficult, but we got through it. So yeah, something to tell the grandkids if they ever have any many years down the line. But I mean that was the same when I hadn't been forced to do a COVID test, and now I've done quite a few of those, so I can tell that story at least. But yeah, the quarantine thing to me just sounds like, I don't know. It sounds very good. Just mandatory 10-day football manager. I would do that anyway. I used to do that when I was at university. Just stay indoors all week, 2 weeks playing football manager.
You can argue you've been practicing for this pandemic all your life, Paul.
Yeah,
that's pretty much it. I'm stuck at home. I have an app on my phone that I can't turn off, and it tracks my location to make sure I don't leave the house. And I have to record my condition twice a day on it, and I get a daily phone call from a robot that pretty much does the same.
When you say record your condition, does it mean how tipsy you are?
The quarantine.
How many tins have you had?
Yeah.
4.
No, fortunately not. It doesn't record that information, nor how many hours I've dedicated to computer games or Netflix. But yeah, it's a shame there is no football on in the daytime at the moment because we are in January. Obviously, there's Premier League and African Cup of Nations going on, but that's all.
And A-League, if the games don't keep continually getting called off because of COVID, every time I see something on Twitter about A-League, it's a game that's been called off. Annoying.
Yeah. Let's hope we won't be getting that this season because we've got quite a busy schedule for fixtures. But fixtures we'll be talking about in another podcast because, well, yeah, this podcast is about transfers. And let me ask you, Paul, if you were a player here and you're waiting to meet your team and you're waiting to train, you're inside your quarantine and you're listening to this podcast to get up to speed. And hello, if you are, we'd love to have you on. What would you be doing, Paul?
If I was a new player to K-League, I would be playing Football Manager to learn more about my teammates because, obviously, there might be the excuse that I give to the fitness coach who's giving me, a bit of a regime to follow. But when he sees that I'm a stone overweight, he'll say, I was just doing homework, mate. It was just, I'm trying to make sure that I know who does what and how good they are and things like that. But I don't know. I think I probably would do that, if I was a footballer, just learn a bit about my teammates because a foreign player coming over to K-League probably doesn't know anything about any of them, really. So I'll probably do that. But I think there was somebody who did that, not a K-League player, but there was. I tried to find this earlier, but I couldn't find who it was. Somebody who did this.
Gundogan at City. Gundogan at City. He's got the three screens set up and Football Manager on, but the picture is a bit too blurry to get his tactics. I wonder whether. I want to know if football managers play Football Manager. I want to know if Pep goes home and he's like, well, let's play it the way I really want. 4-4-2.
It's a bit Busman's holiday, no? I mean,
possibly.
Well, I know that the K-League coach from a few years ago who we had, he does play Football Manager, but I do wonder if like K-League managers, if they actually do play. I doubt it. But I don't know. I just for someone like Pep, it must be so easy.
Somebody like Pep, somebody like Kim Tae-wan at Gimcheon because he's got all the answers. But if anyone's listening with suggestions of which Korean football challenge to try on Football Manager, well, please do let me know as I have the new version and I'm languishing at the bottom of the conference north with Chester at the moment, but I'm going back to K-League soon once I figured it all out. Okay.
Speaking of Football Manager, I am still a bit bitter that I got knocked back by FM to be a scout for them a few years ago. But unbelievable. They can't even get the positions right in K-League. I remember I bought the 2019 version for the iPad and players were all the wrong positions. It was ridiculous. Anyway,
we should move on from Football Manager, but just on touch of that, I remember I made the 2020 FA Cup final with Seoul Eland, and I finished runners-up to John Buck, obviously, and they still put me in Champions League, which that's not how it goes down here. But anyway, we should move on. We should move on because this is not a Football Manager podcast, but an early shout out for our long-term Patreon subscriber, Jake Heverkin. He's actually gone through the painstaking process of creating like an accurate database down to K5 for Football Manager. So you can follow his work at Mediocre Jake on Twitter if a lower league challenge is to your liking. Back to the podcast. We're talking about transfers, and once again, let me mention that date. It is the 14th of January. This is because while we will be talking about the headline transfers, the surprising transfers, and the smart transfers, this pod will be dated quickly. So please forgive us if a massive signing heads to the K-League beyond this day and we don't mention it. Don't write in, okay? Before that, though, Paul, would you mind running us through some housekeeping for us?
Yes, Patreon articles. First of all, the first of the new year that we've got on there is goalkeepers. It is what we think will be the starting goalkeepers for all of the K-League 1 teams. Now, that is because we've heard you, So Rare players. We know that you seem to like K-League goalkeepers, but also because in the first 14 days of January, there have been no fewer than 17 transfers among goalkeepers from one K-League team to the other, which is mad. And I think 8 of those are K-League 1. So we've had a sit down We've done our research and we've gone through every team and looked at who is the most likely starter, and of course also who they are rivaled by, if anybody. Some goalkeepers really aren't that they haven't really got much competition for that first team spot. Some have quite a lot. So if you want to go to patreon.com/K-League United, you can find that on there. We also have breakout stars and comeback players coming on there as well. And there is actually been a change to our Patreon tiers, but more information on that in a little bit. But of course, this, as Matthew mentioned earlier, this is the fourth pre-season episode in this mini-series. The first one that we had, I spoke to K-League agent Jung Hwee Wan. He was talking about a whole host of things, why players from ASEAN nations don't come to K-League. He thought his thoughts on the foreign goalkeeper ban, all that kind of thing. Next, it was Kim Min-soo, who was an interpreter for Daejeon, Suwon, Incheon, Busan, Jeonnam Dragons, what it was like to be an interpreter in K-League. And then last week, I spoke to Kim Tae-hong of Fit Together to talk about data sports science in football. And then Park Ye-eun of the Korea women's national team, who was hoping that the Asian Cup in India was going to try and hope to be something of a shop window for her to attract a move to the US.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, on K-League United, we've got lots of stuff on there as well to keep me ticking over until the season actually begins. Nathan Sartain has been working on something about Gangwon's attack and the problems that they had last season. I've been working on something that's just titled 13 Minutes in K-League 1. That was basically how long Daejeon were in the lead for the playoff second leg. I was thinking about away trips to Jeju and Pohang and all this for about 13 minutes, and it all went very, 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 very wrong. But there you go. That's But today, yes, we are talking about transfers and starting, Matthew, with the headline transfers.
Yeah, headline transfers. I've gone for the obvious one. That's Lee Sung-woo. Lee Sung-woo is here in Korea. He's in the K-League and he is at Suwon FC. He made the switch from St. Truden, where he made 17 league appearances in 3 seasons, but 0 since the start of the current season. He dropped out of the Korean national team in the process, last making an appearance for the senior side in June 2019 in a friendly with Iran. Obviously, COVID's been there as well in between, which probably hasn't helped his cause. But so a player that's not playing, a player that's not in the national team, why the hype? Well, let's just do this one more time, shall we? Lee Sung-woo is considered one of the leading talents, young talents of Korea a few years back. He was the leading talent of 3 Korean players to be picked up by Barcelona in 2011 at the age of 13, alongside Paek Sung-ho and Jang Gyeol-hee. He caused a stir in the AFC 2014 Under-16 Championships. Korea finished runners-up in that competition, losing to North Korea in the final, and he just terrorized defenses, namely Japan's, and he was the top goal scorer and the MVP of the competition. He was the poster boy of the 27 Under-20 World Cup in Korea, and he was also picked for Korea's World Cup squad in 2018, despite his lack of experience. He did get gold in the Asian Games a month later, though, helping Son Heung-min to get that military exemption and himself as well. Things didn't quite work out for him at club level. Barcelona, they had that controversy. They breached international transfer regulations. That affected his ability to train and play with the squad. And the ban was lifted in 2016, but the 3 Koreans had fallen quite behind their peers in the youth academy. Did move to Verona, where he made 40 league appearances in 2 seasons before then moving to St. Truden in 2019. But he's enough about his past. He's following the path set by his former Barcelona teammate, and he's following Paek Sung-ho's example. Paek Sung-ho moved here to Jeonbuk last season, and the difference in him is great. It's fantastic. We've seen him become a regular fixture in the Jeonbuk team. We've seen him become a fixture again in the senior side, and he's rebuilding his career. And this is what Lee Sung-woo is aiming for here. He'll get guaranteed game time at Suwon FC. He's right in front of the eyes of the national team coaches and, more importantly, when it comes to Korea, the national team fans. And it'll let him rebuild his reputation and return to the Korean national team, I think, because he does have a talent there, but the lack of playing time he's been afforded at club level has greatly affected him. And yeah, Suwon FC, they're on the up as well. Obviously, they finished 5th last season. They want to push on, made some good signings this window. And yeah, I think Lee Sung-woo could prove the perfect foil to Lars Veldwijk or the newly signed Kim Hyun as well. So, yeah, I think Lee Sung-woo, he's my headline act.
One thing that I would like to add about Lee Sung-woo is that's something that I tweeted not so long back was something that he said in a press conference that he seems quite determined or not rattled, but he's quite aware. I think that he has to put some people in their place or sort of prove people wrong. Mm-hmm. Basically, he was asked by one particular journalist, I don't know who it was. He said, what do you think about this perception that you're only in K-League because you failed in Europe? And Lee Sung-woo was like, well, that's the first I've heard of that particular sort of mindset. Isn't that just your opinion? Asking that particular journalist. So if that was me, I wouldn't ask that kind of question. But if that was me, I'd be just, yeah, okay, you've well and truly put me in my place there. But I think Lee Sung-woo, he looks like he's going to come here and really prove everybody wrong. And to be honest, I do hope he does, because Korea probably could do with a player like him in the full national team. You know, that kind of number 10 kind of striker or sort of attacking mid. Mm-hmm. But yes, my headline transfer for this window so far has been Dave Bultuis from Ulsan Hyundai to Suwon Blue Wings. Can I just say that I love the way that Suwon's media team fumbled the announcement of this. They announced that he'd had a baby, or his wife rather, had a baby before actually unveiling him as a new signing. So that was fantastic. They did something very similar with Saric as well. Saric has come back, took pictures of him wearing the new kit, and then realized, oh, wait, yeah, that's a new kit. Here's our new kit for next year. But yeah, Dave Bultuis. Actually, did you know that he's married to the daughter of Dutch footballer Richard Wichtiger, who played for Ajax, Barcelona, Bordeaux, and Blackburn Rovers, all the top clubs there. But yeah, he's married to a famous footballer's daughter. But yeah, anyway, to them, congratulations for their new child, and also for the move to Suwon Blue Wings. I just think this is a sign that makes perfect sense, because you know they've allowed Doniel Henry to go. I think perhaps my own opinion of this is that he spent too much time away on international duty, perfectly within his rights to do so, but he missed large chunks of the season because of that. In a normal situation without COVID, that's doable. But now, if there is that risk of having to quarantine as well, you're going to miss 4 or 5 games either side of a player going up to join up with their national team. Mm-hmm. That ultimately, bit of a sidestep, I think, is what cost Ali Bayev his place at Daejeon. He got released. He wasn't available for the last 2 games of the season because he wasn't fit. He hadn't played because he'd been in Uzbekistan. But anyway, Dave Bultuis, he's a very similar type of defender in that he will just slot straight in where Doniel Henry left. He will sit in that back 3. He can play out. He can bring the ball forward. He's to me, he's a very entertaining defender. You know, he's very rock and roll. He's high energy, and he does bring a bit of a winning mentality as well. You know, he won the ACL in 2020. Very nice guy. We'll try and get an interview with him at some point this year, I'm sure. But what I also love about him as well is that he followed so many clubs on Instagram. After it was clear that he was leaving Ulsan, he followed, I think, Gangwon and Jeju and Suwon. And there's rumors of him going to other clubs. And I don't know, that must have been on purpose, just to sort of, you know, mess with people's heads. But I think that's a great signing. And now Suwon Blue Wings are building something of a spine of a team. And they've made some sensible moves. And that, to me, is the best one. He's a reliable defender, been his first choice. And what I like about Dave Bultuis is that he's been there all the time for 3 seasons. And he's had 3 different centre-back partners for that entire time. But every time he's just managed to develop this good relationship and a good partnership with each of them. So, yeah, he's my headline transfer so far.
Okay. Well, we're not going to go into any more headline transfers now. There are some other ones out there, which I'm sure listeners will be willing to point out. But I think after we're going to have a quick break, and then we'll come back, and we're going to talk about transfers that have surprised us, Paul. Don't go anywhere.
FNR is a revolutionary football-dedicated digital platform, the first of its kind in Australia. It provides a 24/7 live online radio platform experience, podcast hub, and acts as a content provider for TV, radio and digital. Having reached millions of listeners and football fans since launching, FNR is accessible worldwide via its website or app, providing a platform to discuss, debate and celebrate the world game. We are your voice of football, FNR Football Nation Radio.
Welcome back to the K-League United podcast. I'm Matthew Binns and I'm joined by Paul Neat. Hi, Paul.
Hello there.
And before the break, we went through our headline transfers so far in the K-League. And now we're going to move on to transfers that have surprised us. And I'm going to let Paul lead with this one. Paul, which transfers have surprised you?
I've actually got two. I'm being a bit cheeky here, but they're both heading to the same club and play in the same position, so I think I'm allowed. That is Kwon Wang-yu and Kim Min-hyuk, both signing for Songnam FC. Kwon obviously signed from Pohang, Kim Min-hyuk from Jeonbuk. So I think these two signings are real statements of intent. Songnam had a decent defense last year. They conceded the fourth fewest goals pre-split. Post-split, they managed to concede fewer goals than Daegu in the season with 48 shipped. But they also lost Kwon Kyung-won, who's obviously now gone and is now playing overseas. So they did need to sign replacements. But in terms of the personnel, Kwon Wang-yu obviously played very well for Pohang last year. He had lots of interest from other clubs. I think Jeonbuk were even said to be interested in signing him. They managed to pip Jeonbuk to the signing of him. And then they got one of Jeonbuk's players. I know he kind of lost his way there, Kim Min-hyuk, towards the end of his time in Jeonju. He wasn't first choice anymore for whatever reason that may be. But he's been part of successful Jeonbuk teams for the last few years. And those two signings, I think now we'll start to see, can Songnam really finally get back to where they were 10 years ago, getting back into the top half of the table, because it's obviously very clear that Kim Nam-il wants to set the foundations of very solid defense. They've got Kim Yong-gwang, the goalkeeper, signed up to a new contract. They've got those two there in the back four. I think those are real statements of intent, and it's they've been surprising just because where those two ended up, considering where they've been and who was interested in signing them as well.
Yeah, I mean, actually, it's kind of not really a surprising transfer in, but that was probably my biggest surprise from the window. In that's the departure of Kwon Kyung-won to J League's Gamba Osaka, and that spurned Songnam to get Kim Min-hyuk, which I think it's an incredible signing, really, because Kim Min-hyuk, he was really he was a second choice defender for most of the year, and he just suddenly disappeared, fell out of favour, maybe a slight injury. It wasn't really clear, it isn't always that clear with these things, in K-League. There's always a veil covering up injury news. But yeah, I still don't understand it, because Kim Min-hyuk used to be utilised very well at Jeonbuk, especially in eradicating teams which have a main threat. So when you'd see Jeonbuk play Ulsan, Kim Min-hyuk would stick on junior. When you saw them play Pohang, Stanislav Ilyachenko would be kept out of the game. And when you saw them play Daegu, he'd go for Sasinia. And you look at the results that Jeonbuk got in 2020 against those three teams and the lack of goals those three players scored. And you're thinking, why are you getting rid of Kim Min-hyuk? It might be the player's own preference. Maybe the player feels like his time is up at the club. But very, very good signing there for Songnam. And yeah, I think one thing that's also surprised me is Kim Yong-gwon from Gamba Osaka. He's actually gone to Ulsan. Now, this isn't my surprise. It's more of a surprise that that went under John Buck's radar. I feel that John Buck want a centre back, and they've let this one come in and go to Ulsan instead. Surely they must have known that he was looking for a move. And also Dave Bulthuis. Now, I don't know whether Dave Bulthuis would have been to John Buck's preference. I don't know if Ulsan would have wanted to sell Dave Bulthuis to John Buck as well as that element of things. But that's another good defender. If John Buck really want to replace their centre-back, then they're letting very high-quality defenders just pass them by, and they're not really linked with anybody else at the moment. So a bit of a surprise. But in terms of actual inbound transfers, I think I'm going to drop down into the K-League 2, which is not something I normally do, Paul, but Seoul Eland have been very busy, and they always are. And a busy transfer window for Seoul Eland doesn't mean they're going to have a good season. We've learned this year after year after year after year. But yes, they are having another good transfer window. Being very accurate with my words there, because I'm not going to predict them to go up. Fool me once, shame on But the one of Tsubasa from Daegu FC, I think that's a really good signing for Seoul Eland. Tsubasa, he's been at Daegu for 4 years. He made 34 appearances last season, and Daegu finished third in the end. Okay, Tsubasa, he only made 17 starts, but still 34 appearances for a club that was in the Champions League, that qualified again for the Champions League this year. That's
and he scored in the FA Cup final as well.
And he scored in the FA Cup final as well. Yeah, I forgot Daegu were also in the FA Cup final. So a very, very high quality player they signed there. And once again, we're going to have to talk about, can Seoul Eland do something when it comes to preview time.
Another one for Seoul Eland, I would just say quickly, is Yoon Bo-sang, the goalkeeper from Gwangju. He'll be the best goalkeeper in K-League 2, probably.
Easily, yeah. And one, I mean, just naming him off, but signed Lee Dong-yeol from Jeju United. Now, he's a younger player, but he had a bit of quality about him. He was up front for Jeju for most of their campaign, and Jeju finished 4th in the end. That's a really good sign. And then, obviously, they had that big signing in the summer with Kim In-sung, so could be an interesting season ahead for Seoul Eland. But as always with the Leopards, don't get ahead of yourselves. So we've done surprising signings, Paul. I feel let's talk about smart signings. As transfers, we think, that was an intelligent move. I can see what they're doing there, and I think they've outsmarted a few other teams to get that signing. And I'd like to start this one because, again, it's John Buck related. I know it's biased, but this was quite a signing, a smart transfer for me. That's Chae Young-jun. Chae Young-jun has made the move from John Buck to Jeju. He was on the cusp of being a first-team regular at John Buck, and while deserving of the starting place he'd be deserving of a starting place if he was in any other side in this division. He's really good, but because John Buck has that envious depth, he found it quite difficult. But Chae Young-jun was in the K-League's best 11 in 2018, having helped Gyeongnam to finish runners-up. And he was signed by John Buck in that window where Chae Kang-hee left, Jose Moraes came in, and it was clear that the John Buck user director of football, it's clear that they bought players in the John Buck mould, and Jose Moraes didn't want to use them. And Jose Moraes gave him 6 months and then loaned him out to Pohang for 18 months. And as soon as he got to Pohang, what happened? He was made Pohang's captain. He was that influential. He returned in 2021 because Kim Sang-sik said he wanted him. So he made him vice captain for last season, and he saw regular minutes. But then we got to April, and guess who came through the door? Paek Sung-ho. And then you're like, Chae had break there, and now Paek's here, and you can't argue with the improvement Paek Sung-ho has shown over the course of the season. And to make matters worse for Chae, he had an injury late on, which saw his place all but slip away. And he missed the title running. He's a quality defensive midfielder, though, and he's going to provide the cover to Jeju's defence that allow the likes of Yumbit Garam, who's gone there, to push forward. So great bit of business. Which
actually is my smart transfer, is Yumbit Garam from Ulsan to Jeju. So yes, thank you for that. Jeju are not messing around with this transfer window. I know John Book, as you said, have made a lot of signings and certainly in midfield, but so have Jeju. And Ewan McGrath, he's only 31. He's a winner. Well, he was the MVP of the ACL in 2020 when they won it, when Ulsan won it. He's just that extra bit of class to get them into the ACL because that's where Jeju want to be. They made they weren't hiding away from that fact last season. The manager said it. Ju Mingyu said it in an interview with me in June last year that Jeju deserved to be back in the ACL. And I think we have short memories in football because obviously I know that Jeju went down in 2019 and they were in K-League 2 in 2020. But that was just a blip. This is a big club backed by SK. They finished second in 2017.
Yeah.
They win the ACL every year almost. It was they're a big club and they're making big club signings and it's good to see because yes, obviously neutral fans want to see somebody else win the league other than Jeonbuk. But we can't hang our hats on Ulsan every season because obviously as we've seen for the last 3 years, that's not really happened.
No. There needs to be
the more teams that are competitive, the more chance of somebody else winning the league it becomes. And I'm not saying Jeju are going to win the league, but with some of the signings that they've made, especially in midfield, like so the last game of the season, they had Kim Bong-soo and Kim Young-uk in the center of midfield in a 4. This year, they're going to have, they'll be spot for choice, Cheong-jun, as you've just said. Lee Chang-min is still there. They've got, obviously, now Yoonbik Garam, who can play in that number 10 if they want him to do that. Spot for choice. And I think when it was quite clear, because Yoonbik Garam almost left last year, didn't he? But he was given one more year, I think. I think they managed to persuade him to stay for one more year. But as soon as he became available, like Cheong-jun, could play in any K-League team without any question. If Yoonbik Garam went to Jeonbuk, all right, it's a bit old for Jeonbuk at 31, perhaps. But if he went there, you would go, yeah, fair enough. Why not?
But yeah, Jeju have been very good. They've brought in a new goalkeeper as well, Paul, and we are going to talk about goalkeepers. Yeah. There is a goalkeeper piece that goes into more depth on this on Patreon. So there's a little plug there again for that.
Yeah.
But Paul, you're very familiar with this goalkeeper that Jeju has signed. I feel that we can't just skirt past Jeju and not talk about the goalkeeper they've signed.
Yeah. Kim Dong-jun was in the Korean national team a few years ago, had that ACL injury, came back for Songnam. Then he got a big money move to big money team all of a sudden, Daejeon. Then he dislocated his shoulder in the FA Cup and missed the whole season. That was in 2020. 2021, he came back. He was first choice. But it was funny because he said something in a pre-season interview that he still wasn't very confident about diving on a certain side, the side that he hurt his shoulder, right? He still wasn't feeling 100% confident. And I'm not sure whether that's a factor, but psychologically or what it is, but he just isn't the same goalkeeper he was 2 or 3 years ago. He just isn't. He kept one clean sheet last season. One clean sheet. Now, bearing in mind that Daejeon's first year pro, who was third choice, ended up getting a run in the team, played 9 games in a row, I think, or 9 games in total, kept 5 clean sheets as a first year pro. But Kim Dong-jun didn't even manage to keep more than 1. And I'm not sure how Wyscout calculates this, but he was at fault for a ratio of 2.43 goals last season. I can think off the top of my head right now, a few goals. It was his fault. He didn't need to do that. We won 3-1 against Anyang at home in the second-class game of the league season, winning 3-0 up. He comes out in no man's land, and he's lost, and he just managed to slice it or something. And then it's just, why are you doing that? It's just, I'm not upset to see him leave at all. I think to swap him for Lee Chang-gun is a very, very smart business, which I'll get to later. But Kim Dong-jun, if he's the goalkeeper he was 3 years ago, pre-injury, it's just very, very. I can see why they've done it, but I don't see him. He's not an upgrade to Lee Chang-gun by any means.
No, and they've also sent Oh Sung-hoon to Daegu.
Yeah.
So they're putting it all they're putting it banking fully on Kim Dong-jun here. And as you said, the potential there, he was a national team hopeful years ago while he's at Songnam. It was a shame what happened to him with all the injuries, but just looking at his stats, he actually conceded the most as a goalkeeper last season in K-League 2. So it's a big step up for him. Maybe he'll do better in a team like Jeju. Maybe he just needs another pre-season, some time off to get that fully healed up. I don't know. For all the good work Jeju's done around the rest of the squad, it is a concern though.
Can I just actually, on the subject of goalkeepers, as I mentioned earlier, in the first 2 weeks of the transfer window, 17, I'm going to run through them all, okay? Ijun, Pohang to Gwangju, Yim Pyong-guk, Gwangju to Pohang, Yim Bo-sang, Gwangju to Seoul, Eland, Kim Young-min, Seoul, Eland to Gwangju. So a lot of trading places there. Kim Dong-jun, Daejeon to Jeju, Lee Chang-gun, Jeju to... Let's start again. Kim Dong-jun, Daejeon to Jeju, Lee Chang-gun going the other way. Jongsan, Incheon to Daejeon, Park Ji-won, Daejeon to Chungnam Asan, Yu Sang-hoon, Seoul to Gangwon, Lee Bom-soo, Gangwon to Jeonbuk, Lee Bom-young, ex-Gangwon, the brother of Lee Bom-soo, is now going to Suwon FC from Jeonbuk. Chae Pil-soo, Busan to Songnam, Jeon Jong-hyuk, Songnam to Busan, Kim Kun-bae, Songnam to Gimpo, Moon Gyeong-gyeon, Ansan to Jeju, Oh Sung-hoon, Ulsan to Daegu, and Park Song-soo, Daegu to Anyang. 17 goalkeepers have moved in 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's like when one falls, it's like domino effect. One falls, they all switch places. Waiting for the music to stop, I guess. But they are the goalkeepers. You can find out more about goalkeepers, especially the K-League 1 starting goalkeepers. That is a full in-depth article on patreon.com/KLeague United. You can read that now. That's been out for a few days. Anyway, let's have a quick break, Paul, and then when we come back, I want to talk about teams as a whole. Which teams do you think have done the best business? So don't go anywhere.
O.G. Lewis is your neighborhood British bar and cafe located in the Old Jiro district of Seoul. Decorated in old English antiques and furniture for a true homely feel, you can enjoy homemade scones, cakes and afternoon tea during the day, and traditional British favourites like beef stew, English ale, and a fine selection of wines at night. Available for private parties or simply an evening out, O.G. Lewis is sure to become your favourite neighbourhood pub. Be sure to mention K-League United at the bar during your visit and you'll get 10% off your bill.
Welcome back to the K-League United podcast. I'm Matthew Binns. I'm joined by Paul Neat, and we've been going through the transfers so far in the K-League 1 and K-League 2. And coming to the end of it now, Paul, I want to talk about the teams doing the best bit of business. We've talked about Jeju. I don't think we're going to be choosing Jeju. In fact, Paul, who have you chosen to do the best bit of business, or has done the best bit of business, rather?
Kelterprise, I have chosen Daejeon Hana Citizen. It's a rebuild, frankly. I think 10 players were released. A few others were sold. A few others were swapped. Hana are starting from scratch again to make sure that it is definitely third time lucky that they go up now, because they've spent a lot of money and they don't want to stay in K-League 2. They want, obviously, fans aren't daft. We know that Hana Financial Group they don't own a club for the fun of it. They want to build their brand across Asia, and they want to do that through football, So they want to be in K-League 1, be in the Champions League. They said when they first did the takeover that they want it to be a global football club, So being in K-League 2 for much longer will not be what they want to do. But I want to talk about one particular piece of business that they've done, was the 2-for-3 swap deal that I mentioned a little bit earlier. Kim Dong-jun, the goalkeeper, and Lee Ji-sol, the 23-year-old centre-back, they were swapped. They went from Daejeon to Jeju in exchange for Lee Chang-gun, Kwon Han-jin, and Kim Young-uk. Now, originally, this is funny because originally it was supposed to be Jin Sung-wook, the striker,
Mm-hmm.
But according to some sources, when this was suggested to him, this idea of okay, Jin, you're going to go to Daejeon, he was nonplussed about it. He's like, no. And I found that hilarious because the fans at Daejeon were fuming. I'm a member of one of their forums. It's 9720.kr, I think. And it was mayhem for like the first few days after this deal was first talked about. We were thinking we're getting 3 players, but the raw end of the deal here.
Mm.
In the end, Jin Sang-wook was swapped with Kim Young-wook, experienced midfield player, and because Lee Chang-min is now staying at JG for 1 more year before he does his military service, they have now too many midfield players in there. So they allowed Kim to move to Daejeon. Now, this is a very good move because obviously they've just lost Park Jin-sop. He's gone to Jeonbuk, lost their captain. They need an experienced midfield player in there. So this is very, very good. Lee Chang-gun was called up to the national team not so long back. They got Kwon Han-jin. It's probably the weakest of the 3 signings, but he's an experienced centre-back who at K-League 2 should be able to do it with his eyes closed, frankly. You know, play in the centre of that back 3, just dictating who does what. It's a very, very sensible. But they've also signed some really, really smart signings. Kim Jae-woo, the defender from Daegu, you know, he's been involved in the Korean under-23 setup. They beat Suwon Blue Wings, the signing of Kim In-gyun, who was the K-League 2 Young Player of the Year last year. He is 23 now, so he's not going to be a young player next season. He won't be the under-22 player, but still, great young player coming through. Leandro was obviously the worst kept secret in K-League from Seoul Eland. He's been sharing his updates on his Instagram story, and the Daejeon fitness coach has been sharing them. And he posted a picture of an apartment block to say that he's arrived in Korea and he's undergoing his 10-day quarantine. And I have been told that is definitely Daejeon. So he is. If by today, the 14th of January, it hasn't been announced, it will have done by the time this podcast comes out, I'm sure. So he's not had the best of 2021s, but 10 combined goals and assists in the last 2 seasons is not bad. They're also heavily linked, and perhaps by the time this comes out, Cho Yu-min as well. These are all signings that you go, yeah, that makes perfect sense. These are all hungry players who are too old now to be the under-22 rule players, but they're still good young players who perhaps got a point to prove. They maybe lost their way. And also, they've also got Jong San from Incheon, who will be a very reliable number 2 to Lee Chang-gun in goal. And they probably still haven't done yet because obviously they've signed Massa on a permanent deal from Gangwon, but they still need a striker. So they've done great business so far. I am now confident that they can win K-League 2. I didn't think that last year or the year before, really. But this year, I think with the signings that they've made, even though they've lost some important players, they've managed to replace them very well. And it's going to be, I hope, a very strong season for them. But what about you? Who've you got as your team doing the best bit of business?
Well, yeah. Well, just like you say, Daejeon are going to win the league every year. I've gone for a team that many of their fans are convinced they're going to win the league every year, and that's Suwon Samsung Blue Wings. Because, well, yeah, just bear with me. Suwon have moved quickly to secure the signatures of 3 foreign signings, and that gives them time to have a full pre-season, gives them time to get through quarantine, and gives them time to adapt to their new surroundings. So they're not doing this last minute, which is always a good start. They've also picked up 2 proven in K-League players in the form of Dave Bulthuis from Ulsan, as we've already mentioned, and their former midfielder, Saric, who's come back. But they've also picked up a Danish striker in Sebastian Groning, and he scored 29 in 47 games for his last club, which was Danish side Viborg. Forgive me if I got the pronunciation incorrect there. But he helped them win promotion in his first season there, and he claimed the Golden Boot as well in that season. So a very promising player that they've got there up front. And that's the whole spine there. They've got a defender, central midfielder, forward. Perfect.
Yeah.
And this replaces Jeric, meh. Nicolau Dumitru, didn't really get much of a chance. And Daniil Henry, who we said was probably
very
fell out of
good.
favour.
But, yeah.
The trips to Canada probably made it quite difficult for him during these COVID times. So they've got in good foreign players, and this can help you get a lot further in this league. And I like to think at least 2 of these, if not all 3, will, it's going to bolster them immediately. They've also signed Guangzhou's Yi Han-do to add further depth to a back 3 that was sometimes lacking a bit last season, but he's not a bad defender, and he's probably going to be contesting his spot with Jang Ho-ik because their other centre-back, Min Sang-yi, is now one of the captains, so I don't see him being dropped. They still need to dabble. I personally don't think they have a quality goalkeeper. They have okay keepers. Don't get me wrong, Suwon fans. I know you're probably clambering into the comments right now, but No Donggun and Yang Hyun-mo, they're good keepers, but there's a reason that they've divided the playing time between each other. And that's because the manager can't really choose who he wants in goal, who he can trust. They're going to also miss Kwon Chang-hun. He's gone to the military. They're going to miss his creativity, but they always knew that he was going to be going. They knew what they were letting themselves in for, because they brought him back so he could go to the military. But funny enough, they actually played well before he arrived last season. That end of season tail off, that was probably more likely to be attributed to the departure of Ko Song-bom, who went to Kim Chon-sang-moo as well. So bringing in Saric there in central midfield, that will help there. So whisper it, I think Suwon have done good business, and
they have.
I
would just say about Elvis Saric is that he left midway through 2019, and still, at the end of the season, he was still one of the top 5 assist makers in K-League 1 with 7. Yeah. He made 7 assists in the first half of 2019. Great signing.
Mm-hmm, definitely, and hopefully with this new striker that they've got in, who looks like he's a proven goal-scoring talent, might all fall into place. And at the beginning, the first half of last season, we were talking about them about being dark horses in the title race.
Yeah.
And we were definitely wrong come the end of the season, mind, but sort out those little bits there, and who knows for Suwon.
Exactly.
But shocking revelations aside, that is the end of this week's podcast, this week's pre-season episode. And Paul, if people would like to follow us or support us, how can they do that?
Yes, we are on social media, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, all at K-League United. Of course, you can find us. The link's always in the Bruno bio, but, he won't be in K-League next year. Maybe, he says that he might be in K-League next season, but we don't know yet, so I have to think of a new outro if he does leave. But yes, we are also on Patreon. Now, as I mentioned earlier, we have new tiers for 2022. So you can join as little as $1 per month. K-League fans can access all of our extra podcast videos and articles for $3 per month. But we also offer weekly injury news, and we also take questions on players and who might start here and there and whatnot for $5 per month. So that is a lot cheaper than what it was last year, and frankly, a bargain.
Indeed. And if you want to listen to our podcast live, you can do so every Thursday on Football Nation Radio down in Australia. And you can subscribe to this podcast via iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts, TuneIn Radio, and more. Leave a review, and you will get entered into the next K-League kit contest when season 5 proper kicks off. And that will be kicking off in February ahead of the new season. But for now, I've been Matthew Binns. Thanks again, Paul, for this pre-season series. It's been a great, really enjoyable series, really enjoyable discussions. And
my pleasure.
Guess we're on to season 5. Goodbye.
공격 복귀 김신우